Season 30, Episode 12, Evening's Glow. So this is my first attempt with the sky, and I started to try dark to light, and that turned out to be actually a big mistake because I was never able to get the light where it needed to be, or the whole thing for that matter, and just used a lot of paint. So I now know that it's light to dark to get the best effect. So I abandoned this one completely, started over, and asked Happy Little Bob to show me where to place the sun. And he pointed right about there. Cool. So that's where that little sun's going. Thank you, Happy Little Bob. Okay, now we're going to start over again, starting with the lighter yellow and working my way out with the darker colors. Sun yellow, warm yellow, real orange, coral, and finally Kona brown for that outer kind of warm brown look. Again, it's still laid on the paint, but still building it out from the lighter in the middle on out. I like this painting for the glow effect. Obviously, that's kind of the biggest impact of it. I don't feel like this is a really powerful painting overall. It's kind of a okay painting, but I think the glow effect, the warm effect, and the semi-mono color effect looks really cool. So I wanted to try it, see how it worked. So I'm just popping off that little dot that I stuck on there, and then just sprayed just a little bit of the warm yellow just to show an indication of the sun, kind of the way his turned out. Now I just mixed a real, I would call this a muted version of Kona brown and the purple to get this really distant mountain range. And I also added some more like yellows and things like that just to kind of mute it out. Probably would have liked it to be a little more muted just so it looked a little more distant like in his painting, but it, this spray paint gets kind of bright as you get pure color, so it kind of worked out in the end. Trees are next, and then I start adding a little more contrast here by intensifying the Kona brown, make it a little darker, but it's still using the same background mountain range color, but just adding more Kona brown to darken it a bit. One of the things that I saw recently in an interview with his son Steve is that he mentioned that Bob would actually do about 8 or 9 of these this one painting, one of the paintings, to get it down to that 26-minute mark that he needed to get, which I found was interesting. Mine are still taking about an hour to do. I can't seem to manage to get it any faster. Maybe if I did the same painting over and over again for about 8 or 9 times, I might speed it up. But I really don't. That's not my purpose. And I can speed it up using the editing program and within the movie program I'm using. So there you go. And now I'm starting to work on the river using the same purple-ish color background, keeping that mono color going, but just kind of lightening it up for the ripples and waves and water splashing things. And this one I just used my fan brush to build in the colors first. I'm trying to get a bead on the contrast, color, tone, all those things. So I'm kind of adding a little more white. I wanted to lighten it up so it looks a little more, it looks different than the mountains and the, alongside the stream. I felt like it was just getting a little bit too dark. So a little white to kind of brighten it up a little bit, make it look a little bit more watery. Then I brought in some of the pure white. You can see my droplets. I dropped a couple off the tip of the brush, so I got to fix those. And then I just kind of started making the upper water portion where where the water's kind of creating like a little bit of a, I guess you call it like a current splash as it's moving downstream. And then I took a little bit of the Kona and tried to create a shadow underneath that. And I felt like it was a little too strong of contrast for the direction of this painting. He was trying to make it a more of a warm, muted look. And so what I did was I came back with a clean brush that's just had lacquer thinner in it. I just kept taking lacquer thinner and running it across the tops of the white and the Kona brown to soften those two colors so it wouldn't be such a delineated look, but a little bit more of a washed out and transparent look. And it kind of felt like that's kind of where I wanted it to go, and it seemed to look a little bit better. I wasn't really matching his painting that well, as you can see, and you'll see at the end of this that it really, the colors mostly and the tones really don't really sync well together, like they're not really that close, but the overall effect I think was achieved. Now I'm just going to block in all the foreground terrain with a 2-inch brush and the same washed out Kona browns. I didn't want anything to be really striking yet. I still wanted to keep everything in the muted tones. And I won't start doing that till I block in the trees and the cabin. And you can see that dot in the middle of the sky. I'm gonna move my third tree over a little bit to cover that dot up. And if you didn't want to put the tree there, you could put a bird there. So it's better than painting the sky over again. That's what's nice about these landscape paintings, is that you can cover a lot of things, happy little mistakes with whatever you want. And I'm just blocking in the little cabin with the same Kona brown. This is straight Kona brown. And then doing my highlights with the lighter colors, the khaki and the light beige. Then I realized I need to do the foliage in order to have the cabin be in front of the foliage. So I went ahead and started to do that along the top of the mountain and around the cabin and such. So that way I can come back and cut into the cabin so that it's nice clean lines on the outer edges where it meets the foliage. And this is again a really super muted green color. I didn't want it to be a bright color, so I added a lot of brown, mostly I think Kona brown, things like that, and same with the tree. I just used the same, and hunter green, that dark green, but I still had to mute that because no matter what I kind of experimented with, it was always too bright if it was right out of the can. I feel like the cabin is much easier to do and detail with the fan brush versus the knife like what he uses, because it's just I think part of it is just you don't have a lot of control with such thin paint, and it's easier just to kind of dot the paint or kind of set the paint in at the tops and bottoms, let that kind of start to settle a little bit, because this paint dries fast, and then pull down and pull up, because by that time it's kind of really almost dry, and it'll be a real dry brush effect. So that's a good way of getting this kind of old rustic wood look, is to dab the paint on top and bottom and then come back and pull it up and down. That way it's almost dry, and it's more like a dryish paint. And this is just adding some white mixed with some burgundy, which I use. The roof is straight burgundy, just trying to get a shingle effect as best as I can. His cabins are pretty rough, so it's pretty forgiving, and then just blocking in the door with straight black. I always find it fascinating that his doors are, I guess they're always open. I don't know. I mean, unless they're always a black door or they're always open. Maybe they're always open. That's very welcoming. And this time I detailed all the outside edges of the cabin with straight black, because what I realized that it was getting really blended into the background, and it was kind of hard to delineate the cabin and the background. I could have tweaked colors some more, but felt like this was kind of a simple way of highlighting the edges. And I went ahead and put that little blue window in, but it was too dark of a blue, so I lightened the blue up. I came back later and highlighted everything with a dirty white, like the around the door, around the roof, and around the window and the window pane. Coming back with that same green, muted. And then I'm going to come back and highlight that, obviously, so that I build upon. This time I left more dirt because I liked the way it was looking. It kind of looked like that patchy kind of grass instead of it just being all blocked in. I like the contrast of the shadows effects. Now I'm just putting a little path in like he did with the Kona mixed with, I'm kind of now just mixing it with all kinds of things, whatever's on my palette. Just trying to get blocking. Now I'm coming in with a little lighter version of it. And the fan brush was kind of making a cool looking bush effect as I was pressing down. So I liked the way it was kind of looking more like small shrubs. And here's I'm highlighting the most upper outer and exposed to the sun portion of the foliage. That's kind of what I was aiming for. And I even do a lighter version at the very end to really hit sun highlights, just like where that just in front of the cabin is. Oh, here it looks like I backed up a little bit with I did some highlighting with the same sun color. Now I'm just throwing in some twigs, branches, things like that. These little details actually, wasn't think they'd make that big a difference, but it actually creates a neat little, cool little like effect. Kind of one more thing for your eye to look at. I'm just putting in a few little trunk uh, elements in there too. So I kind of kept doing a little bit more of the twigs and stuff. Now it's time for the two big old trees. These are always fun. This like I said, this always feels like the reward getting to these trees because they're super easy, super fun, cathartic, kind of adds a really super 3D element to the whole painting. And so I start out with a big liner brush to do that big trunk, and then I come back with a very fine liner brush to do the smaller branches. Great detail. And I also highlight the left side of the trunk with some, I believe it was khaki, just to give it a little dimension. Now the river doesn't look too bad. It looks kind of like a rolling river. I'm going to come back and kind of cover up the base of the tree with some more highlighting of foliage. And I'll do some more sprigs here and there. Yeah, those look neat. They give it a little cool little elements in there. Then I'm going to finally come back with super highlight. I'm just using the warm yellow to just grab the sunlight, like just catching the edge right there where the sun's popping up. And that wraps up this painting. Hope you enjoyed watching this one. Hope you get a chance also to do one. And here is mine, Bob's. Again, thank you so much for watching. I sure appreciate it, and take care.